Throughout history, civilizations have left behind monuments so staggering, so impossibly precise, that even today's most advanced engineering minds struggle to comprehend how they were built. We're talking about structures that shouldn't exist. Impossible structures. Structures that challenge our understanding of the past. Massive stone platforms that sit perfectly aligned to cardinal directions. Blocks weighing hundreds of tons, some weighing 1,000 tons or more, fitted together so tightly you can't slide a sheet of paper between them. Not a millimetre of space, not a gap. And here's what makes it even more mysterious. Many of these sites were built thousands of years ago, yet they showcase technological and mathematical precision that shouldn't have been possible according to conventional history. The official explanation? Simple. Too simple. Our ancestors were hard workers with unlimited time and manpower. They used ramps, ropes, and determination. They had chisel and will. They had the will to move mountains. They had the determination to achieve the impossible through sheer human effort and sweat. But the closer you examine these structures, the more the conventional story starts to crumble and fall apart. The numbers don't add up. The techniques don't work. The timelines become impossible. The math fails. The logic breaks down. The physics doesn't support the narrative. What if these megalithic sites aren't monuments to human perseverance, but rather evidence of something far more profound? Something we've overlooked, something we've been taught to ignore. What if they represent a chapter of human history that's been forgotten, or perhaps deliberately hidden? What if the true history of humanity is far older and far more sophisticated than we've been told? Consider the possibility that our understanding of ancient civilizations is fundamentally incomplete. We've been taught a neat linear progression of human development. Civilization emerged in Mesopotamia and Egypt. Technology gradually advanced. Knowledge accumulated over centuries. But the archaeological evidence tells a different story, a conflicting story, a story that doesn't fit the narrative we've been given. Sites like the Great Pyramid of Giza, the Sphinx, Baalbek in Lebanon, and dozens of others around the world share something remarkable in common. They defy logical explanation. They display engineering mastery that predates written history. They align with celestial bodies in ways that suggest astronomical knowledge we thought ancient people couldn't possess. They contain structural elements that would challenge modern architects. They showcase construction techniques that our best engineers still can't fully explain. And most troubling of all, many of these sites remain partially unexplored, with sealed chambers and hidden passages that authorities have consistently refused to investigate further. Why the resistance? If these monuments are simply tombs or temples built through conventional means, why lock them away? Why prevent researchers from exploring hidden chambers? Why block access to evidence that could potentially rewrite human history? Unless, of course, those answers might challenge everything we've been told. Unless those discoveries might contradict the official narrative so fundamentally that they could shake the very foundations of mainstream archaeology. This is where our investigation begins. Tonight, we're going to examine some of the world's most impossible megalithic sites that defy conventional logic and suggest a history far more complex than mainstream archaeology wants to admit. We'll explore the evidence that challenges official narratives, we'll ask the questions authorities seem reluctant to answer, and we'll look at the mounting proof that ancient civilizations possessed knowledge and capabilities that shouldn't have existed according to our current understanding. We'll examine precision engineering that predates industrialization. We'll investigate astronomical alignments that suggest sophisticated mathematical knowledge. We'll consider the possibility that human history contains vast chapters we've simply forgotten. So, if you've ever wondered whether there's more to history than you've been taught, if you've questioned the official explanations for how these structures were built, if you've looked at ancient monuments and thought something doesn't quite add up, then keep watching. Because what you're about to discover might fundamentally change how you understand human history itself. The Great Pyramid of Giza stands as perhaps the most iconic structure in human history. For nearly 4,600 years, it has dominated the Egyptian landscape. A colossal monument built from approximately 2.3 million limestone and granite blocks. A mountain made of stone, a monument of impossible scale. According to conventional archaeology, Pharaoh Khufu ordered its construction around 2560 BC as an elaborate tomb, and it took roughly 20 years to complete using basic copper tools, wooden sledges, and human labour. The narrative is neat, simple, and fits neatly into our understanding of ancient Egyptian society. It's the kind of story that gets taught in schools and repeated in textbooks without question. Generation after generation learns the same narrative. It's accepted, it's believed. But here's where things start to get complicated. Here's where logic breaks down. The Great Pyramid isn't just any building. It's an engineering marvel that continues to perplex modern architects, modern engineers, people trained in contemporary techniques. The base covers 13 acres and is level to within just 2.1 centimetres across its entire length. Across the entire base, all 13 acres. That means the builders achieved a level of precision in foundation work that would be remarkable even by modern standards. Would be challenging even today. The four sides align almost perfectly with true north, accurate to within 1/20th of a degree, incredibly precise, astronomically accurate. No compass existed, no theodolite, no surveying instruments, no technology. Yet somehow, ancient workers positioned this enormous structure with a precision that requires sophisticated mathematical and astronomical knowledge. Knowledge they supposedly didn't have. The stone blocks fit together with extraordinary precision, many of them cut and positioned with tolerances measured in millimeters. Millimeter precision. Incredibly tight tolerances. Some of these blocks weigh 80 tons or more, yet they're positioned with such exactness that the joints between them are virtually invisible. You can't fit a sheet of paper between many of the blocks, not even a thin sheet, not even briefly. The fit is so tight that it's almost difficult to believe these are separate pieces of stone. They seem like one unified structure. Now, modern construction crews have attempted to replicate the precision seen in the Great Pyramid using only the tools and methods that historians claim were available to ancient Egyptians. Using copper chisels, using wooden sledges, using ropes and determination. The results have been consistently disappointing. Consistently, repeatedly, definitively disappointing. Disappointing across every attempt. Workers struggle to move even modest-sized blocks. Movement is difficult. Motion is arduous. Copper chisels dull within minutes of contact with granite. Dull. Become useless. Become nothing but soft metal. Progress on cutting stone is measured in millimeters per hour. 1 millimeter per hour. Progress measured in fractions of progress. When you extrapolate this to the construction of an entire pyramid containing 2.3 million blocks, each precisely cut and positioned, the timeline becomes impossible. Mathematically impossible. Physically impossible. The mathematics simply doesn't work. If it took ancient workers hours to cut a single block with copper tools, and the pyramid contains millions of blocks, construction would have taken centuries, not the 20 years claimed. Centuries, not decades. If you calculate the number of blocks required, the number would be approximately 3,000 stones per day, every single day for 20 years straight. Without error, without failure, no sick days, no delays, no mistakes, no equipment failures, not a single block cut wrong. Precision on that scale seems inhuman. Yet the official narrative persists despite the math, persists despite the logic, persists despite the evidence. Why? Why hold to an explanation that doesn't work? Perhaps because acknowledging the implausibility would require asking uncomfortable questions about where the knowledge came from. Perhaps because accepting that Khufu couldn't have built the pyramid under those circumstances would mean rewriting the entire history of ancient Egypt. Perhaps because it would challenge the credibility of institutions and scholars who've built their careers on these conventional explanations. Perhaps because the truth is inconvenient. The truth is threatening. But the evidence is there, waiting to be examined by anyone willing to look honestly, waiting for someone brave enough to question the narrative. The Great Pyramid contains other oddities that challenge conventional understanding. Other mysteries, other problems with the narrative. Unlike virtually every other royal Egyptian tomb, the Great Pyramid contains no inscriptions glorifying Khufu, no hieroglyphs proclaim that he built it, no declarations, no statements of ownership, no artwork depicts the construction, no artwork records the achievement, no record of the massive undertaking appears in surviving papyri or temple records. Nothing. Zero. Not a single document, not a single text. This is extraordinary for a civilization obsessed with documenting every aspect of their lives and achievements, every pharaoh, every project, every accomplishment. Pharaohs inscribed their accomplishments on temple walls and tomb interiors. They carved records into stone for posterity. They commissioned detailed accounts of their deeds. They hired scribes to record their history. They wanted to be remembered for all eternity, yet Khufu apparently left no such record of what would be humanity's greatest architectural achievement. The greatest monument ever built, the largest structure of its kind, the most impressive engineering feat of the age, and Khufu left no commemorative inscription, no name carved into stone, no declaration of construction. The only evidence linking Khufu to the pyramid is faint markings discovered in hidden chambers deep within the structure, markings that weren't discovered until the 1800s, long after the pyramid was already thousands of years old. How can we trust the authenticity of markings found thousands of years after they were supposedly made? This raises serious questions about evidence integrity, about reliability, about authenticity. If these marks were truly made by Khufu's workers, how did they survive thousands of years of weathering inside sealed chambers? How were they preserved perfectly while other evidence disappeared? How were they protected? And if Khufu didn't build the pyramid, then who did? Who possessed the knowledge and capability? The interior of the Great Pyramid is equally puzzling. The king's chamber contains a red granite sarcophagus that was never used as a burial receptacle. Archaeologists can find no evidence that it ever contained a body. No bones, no remains, no DNA, no mummies, no burial goods, no evidence that anyone was ever entombed there. The Queen's chamber, despite its name, likely never housed a queen either. These chambers seem designed for some other purpose entirely, a purpose that archaeology has failed to identify. So if not a tomb, what was the pyramid for? These chambers seem designed for a function we haven't discovered. What purpose required such massive stones? What function justified this enormous construction? The pyramid begins to seem like something other than a burial monument, something with a different purpose, something we haven't understood. The precision of the interior construction rivals anything seen in modern buildings, surpasses. Granite blocks in the king's chamber show evidence of drilling and cutting that would be difficult to achieve, even with contemporary power tools. Difficult, some would say impossible. Engineer Christopher Dunn has documented perfectly round drill cores in granite, suggesting the use of tubular drills spinning at precisely controlled speeds. Perfectly round. Not roughly round. Not approximately round. Perfectly. With measured precision. He's found evidence of precision cuts in stone that leave surfaces smoother than modern cutting methods could produce. Smoother, finer, more precise. When he attempted to replicate these cuts using the tools available to ancient Egyptians, he found it physically impossible. Impossible. Not difficult, not challenging, impossible. The copper chisels simply couldn't do the work. They wear down. They break. They can't maintain sharp edges long enough to cut even one block, let alone millions. Copper is soft. It dulls quickly. It cannot cut granite effectively, yet the pyramid is full of granite blocks that have been cut with extreme precision. This is the paradox. This is the problem. This raises a profound question. If ancient Egyptians lacked the tools to produce this precision, where did they come from? Could they have inherited the knowledge from an earlier civilization? Could they have learned from a culture that predated them? Could the Great Pyramid be far older than the official chronology suggests? Could it have been built in an earlier age? Could it have been built by people who possessed technology and knowledge far beyond what we've assumed ancient peoples could achieve? Could there have been lost technology? These aren't fringe ideas dismissed by everyone in academia. They're questions asked by serious researchers and engineers who've carefully examined the evidence, professionals who've spent years studying the pyramid, experts who've measured the stones, experts who've tested the theories. But they're questions that mainstream Egyptology seems unwilling to explore seriously. Unwilling, resistant, perhaps uncomfortable with where the answers might lead. These inconsistencies and oddities don't exist in isolation. They're not random anomalies. They're part of a pattern that extends throughout the pyramid itself. Within the Great Pyramid lie mysteries that remain unsolved to this day, hidden chambers that have been deliberately sealed off from investigation. Deep within the stone, secrets wait, secrets that someone wants to keep hidden, secrets that authorities have consistently blocked from exploration. In the 1990s, a German engineer named Rudolf Gantenbrink gained access to the pyramid with a small robot equipped with a camera, a cutting-edge device, a mechanical explorer. His mission was straightforward: explore narrow shafts within the Queen's chamber that experts believed were purely symbolic, leading nowhere. Just air shafts, just ventilation ducts, nothing significant, nothing worth investigating. What he discovered shocked the archaeological world, shocked them. The robot's camera, peering into spaces no one had seen in thousands of years, revealed something unexpected, something no one anticipated. A perfectly fitted limestone door with 2 copper handles. A real door, not symbolic, not decorative, a real, functional door. This door had never been opened in recorded history. It was sealed, preserved, waiting, and it was waiting to reveal whatever lay beyond. For 4,000 years, sealed. 4 millennia of mystery. The discovery captivated the world's imagination. Think about it. A sealed door inside the Great Pyramid. A door no one had ever opened. A door that had been hidden from the world for 4,500 years. Imagine what might be behind it. Imagine what the builders deemed important enough to hide. Metal fittings like those copper handles had never been found elsewhere in the pyramid, suggesting that this door protected something important, something precious, something worth sealing, something worth hiding. Why use copper handles? Why use metal at all if it's just a decorative door? The answer seems obvious. This door protected something valuable. Gantenbrink's team was poised to open it, to finally answer the questions that had plagued Egyptology for centuries. What secrets had the ancient builders deemed important enough to seal away? Why hide something inside the pyramid? What knowledge was being preserved? But then everything stopped, everything halted, everything was blocked. Egyptian authorities halted the investigation without explanation. No official statement, no justification, no transparency, no communication. Gantenbrink and his team were told no further exploration would be permitted. No discussion, no debate, just a refusal. The door that had remained sealed for millennia would remain sealed indefinitely. Indefinitely. Forever, as far as we know. The world's greatest mystery would stay a mystery. For nearly a decade, the world waited for news. Newspapers speculated. Archaeologists debated. The public wondered what might be behind that mysterious door. Could it be treasure? Could it be records? Could it be technology? In 2002, almost 10 years later, a team sponsored by National Geographic was granted limited access. Very limited, carefully controlled, heavily supervised. Using modern drilling equipment, They carefully pierced a small hole through Ganton Brink's door. A tiny hole, a keyhole-sized opening. What they found was astonishing and terrifying. Another sealed limestone slab directly behind it. A second door. A second barrier. 2 doors. Why would you need 2 doors? Why seal something inside a seal? Why create a double barrier? This suggests something extraordinarily important, something worth protecting twice. No explanation was offered for why a second door would be necessary. No investigation was undertaken to determine what lay beyond. No questions were answered. The drilling stopped immediately. The door remained sealed. Sealed again, sealed tight. And despite repeated requests from researchers worldwide, Egyptian authorities continue to deny further investigation. The requests keep coming. The denials keep happening. The mystery deepens rather than resolves. The more we learn, the less we understand. This pattern of secrecy extends throughout the pyramid, like a systematic effort to hide truth. In 2017, an international team of scientists employed an advanced technology called muon radiography, essentially using cosmic rays to scan the interior of the pyramid without disturbing it, without damaging it, without touching anything. Cosmic rays naturally penetrate the Earth. Scientists learn to detect them, to map them, to use them as tools. The results revealed something extraordinary. A massive void discovered above the Grand Gallery, a hidden chamber large enough to rival the known rooms within the pyramid combined. This void is enormous, space upon space, a hidden room inside the pyramid. This wasn't a speculation. This wasn't a theory. This wasn't guesswork. This wasn't someone's hypothesis. This was hard physical evidence obtained through cutting-edge science. Muon radiography is well-established technology used in particle physics. Scientists immediately hailed it as one of the greatest archaeological discoveries in decades. A void, a space, a chamber hidden inside the pyramid for thousands of years. But once again, when researchers proposed further investigation, Egyptian authorities refused. Refused, denied, blocked. Requests to explore the void were denied outright. Proposals to examine what lay within were rejected. Proposals to understand what the pyramid contains were blocked. The chamber that had remained hidden for thousands of years would remain hidden. What lies in that void? Is it another sealed chamber with another door? Is it filled with artifacts that would rewrite history? Is it completely empty, just a void? Is it something else entirely? We'll never know because we're not allowed to look. We're prevented. We're forbidden. We're denied access. Why such consistent denial? Why block every attempt? The official explanation is preservation concerns. Authorities worry about damaging the structure. They're concerned about protecting Egypt's heritage from sensationalism and irresponsible exploration. They want to be careful. They want to be protective. They want to preserve what's there, or so they claim. But consider the implications carefully. If there's nothing of significance in these chambers, if they're just empty voids or symbolic spaces, why the secrecy? Why the refusal to let scientists examine them? If the pyramid's secrets are truly mundane, truly ordinary, opening them to investigation would actually strengthen the official narrative. It would provide evidence supporting the mainstream account. It would answer questions. It would resolve the mystery. Instead, the pattern is one of consistent obstruction. Consistent, deliberate obstruction. Strategic denial. Every time researchers edge closer to uncovering what lies within, access is blocked. Every discovery that raises new questions is met with denial and delay. Every opportunity to investigate is shut down. This cycle suggests that someone, somewhere, has compelling reasons to keep the pyramid's deepest secrets hidden. Compelling reasons, powerful motivations, something at stake. Could it be that these chambers contain evidence contradicting the official chronology of the pyramid's construction? Could they hold proof that the pyramid is far older than scholars claim? Could they reveal the remains of a civilization that predates known Egyptian history? Could they contain technology or artifacts that would fundamentally challenge our understanding of ancient civilization? Could they contain knowledge we're not supposed to have? These questions remain unanswered, but the consistent denial of access speaks volumes about what authorities might fear. Fear of the truth, fear of revelation, fear of change. These patterns of mystery and denial aren't limited to the interior chambers and sealed doors. They extend to the structures themselves. They extend to the very dating and attribution of these monuments. Across the plateau, from the Great Pyramid, stands another figure, equally enigmatic and equally controversial. The Great Sphinx of Giza has guarded the Giza Plateau for thousands of years, its leonine face gazing eternally toward the rising sun. A sentinel, a guardian, a mystery carved in stone. Its massive stone body stretches 240 feet long. Its head rises 66 feet above the ground. It's carved from a single outcrop of limestone bedrock. One piece of stone, one enormous block carved into a sentinel, one unified monument emerging from the earth. For generations, Egyptologists insisted with absolute certainty that Pharaoh Khafre built the Sphinx during the 4th dynasty, around 2500 BC. It was stated as fact. It was taught in schools. It was accepted without serious question, accepted uncritically. The evidence supporting this claim is surprisingly thin. A small mortuary temple nearby, attributed to Khafre, a causeway connected to his pyramid, and a few ancient texts that mention the Sphinx in relation to his reign. Thin evidence for such a massive claim, circumstantial evidence, weak connections. Yet when researcher John Anthony West began examining the Sphinx more carefully, examining it as a geologist would, he discovered something that challenged this entire timeline, something that changed everything. West observed the base of the Sphinx and its surrounding enclosure, and noticed something that fundamentally changed the dating question. Evidence of water erosion. Not wind erosion, which is what you'd expect in the desert. Not sand abrasion, which creates different patterns. Water erosion. Deep, pronounced weathering patterns consistent with heavy rainfall and flowing water acting on limestone over an extended period. Vertical erosion patterns. Horizontal weathering. The marks left by water. The unmistakable signature of rainfall and flowing water. This was a crucial observation because Egypt's climate has been arid for thousands of years. Thousands. The deserts have been dry since before recorded history, but at the end of the last ice age, roughly 12,000 years ago, the Sahara region experienced a dramatically different climate. A wet climate. A green climate. Heavy rainfall was common. Torrential downpours would have been regular. Wadi systems flowed with water. The rivers ran. The rains came. Vegetation grew. The Sphinx's water erosion patterns match exactly what you'd expect from that climate period. Precisely. Undeniably. Match perfectly. This would place the Sphinx's construction not during the reign of Khafre in 2500 BC, but thousands of years earlier. 9,000 years earlier. 10,000 years earlier. Potentially even before the Egyptian civilization as we know it existed. Before dynasties, before hieroglyphics, before recorded history, before writing. West's geological analysis was rigorous and peer-reviewed. It wasn't sloppy. It wasn't theoretical. It was based on geological evidence, physical evidence, evidence you can see and measure and analyze. In fact, when he presented his findings to a panel of geologists, they overwhelmingly supported his conclusions. The water erosion evidence was compelling, undeniable. The geological record was clear. The data didn't lie. Yet mainstream Egyptology rejected the theory almost universally. Rejected it, dismissed it, ignored it. How did Egyptologists respond to solid geological evidence? With silence, with dismissal, with accusations that West was pursuing a sensationalist agenda rather than legitimate science, with professional rejection and career-threatening criticism. As one observer noted, West is the kind of researcher that academia's worst nightmare fears. Here comes somebody thoroughly, well thought out, well presented, coherently described, with data that cannot be refuted, and it fundamentally challenges established paradigms. Challenges the consensus, threatens the conventional wisdom. So how does the academic establishment respond? They ignore it. They hope it goes away. They avoid the evidence. They don't engage with the argument. And when it doesn't go away, when the evidence persists and accumulates, they double down on the original narrative. They defend their position even harder. They protect their investment in the conventional timeline, their careers, their reputations, their institutions. If the Sphinx does indeed show evidence of construction thousands of years before Khafra, who built it? Who carved this monument? Who possessed the knowledge and capability? West's theory suggests an intriguing possibility. A much older civilization, one now lost to history, carved the Sphinx when the region still enjoyed a wet climate. A civilization we know nothing about. A civilization that left no written records. A civilization whose technology we can't explain. A culture swallowed by history. Perhaps later Egyptians, finding this colossal statue, partially buried and damaged by millennia of weathering, undertook restoration efforts. Found it waiting in the desert. Found it already ancient, already mysterious. They might have recarved the face, giving it new meaning and significance within their own religious framework. They might have restored it. They might have adapted it to fit their own beliefs. This wouldn't erase the accomplishment of Egyptian civilization, but it would place the Sphinx in a much older historical context. Much older. Thousands of years older than currently accepted. Perhaps the Egyptians inherited knowledge and traditions from a preceding advanced culture, one that vanished before recorded history began. A culture whose wisdom was passed down, whose astronomical knowledge was retained, whose mathematical principles were preserved, whose monuments remained. The Sphinx wouldn't be the only evidence of this older civilization. Throughout Egypt and beyond, archaeologists have documented structures and artifacts that seem impossibly advanced for their attributed time period. The precision of construction, the astronomical alignments, the mathematical sophistication all point to a knowledge base that shouldn't exist according to conventional timelines. Yet these structures exist. They're real, measurable, documented, undeniable. They can be measured and examined. They can be studied and analysed. The question isn't whether they exist, but rather who built them and when. How did they do it? Why did they do it? What was the purpose? Mainstream archaeology seems uncomfortable exploring this question, seems reluctant, seems resistant, avoids the inquiry, perhaps because answering it honestly would require abandoning long-held assumptions about human development and historical progression. Perhaps because it would mean rewriting textbooks, perhaps because it would challenge entire careers built on the conventional narrative, perhaps because it would fundamentally alter our understanding of human history. What we're seeing across these sites is a consistency in impossibility, a pattern of achievement that defies explanation. The precision, the scale, the astronomical alignments, these aren't accidents, these aren't coincidences. These represent a deliberate knowledge and capability that transcends what we believe the ancient world possessed. In the mountains of Lebanon stands a monument even more perplexing than the Egyptian pyramids, a site that challenges everything we think we know about ancient construction capabilities. More impossible than the pyramids themselves. More challenging to explain. Baalbek, known in antiquity as Heliopolis, contains the most massive, precisely cut stone blocks ever quarried by human hands. The largest, the heaviest, the most precise. No other site comes close. No other ancient civilization moved blocks of this size with such precision. The main platform, known as the Temple of Jupiter, rests upon three colossal stones called the Trilithon, the Great Trilithon, three stones that define the limits of human engineering, 3 blocks that represent the pinnacle of construction achievement. These blocks are absolutely staggering in scale. Each of the 3 main trilithon stones weighs approximately 800 tons. 800 tons, imagine the weight, imagine the sheer force required, imagine moving that, imagine positioning it exactly. Imagine achieving such precision with such mass. To put that in perspective, modern cranes with the most powerful lifting capacity can handle perhaps 600 tons under ideal conditions. 600 tons. The world's largest mobile cranes strain to lift blocks half the weight of Baalbek's foundation stones. Modern technology, modern machinery, the most advanced equipment we have. It's still not enough. These 3 blocks are fitted into a wall with such precision that you cannot insert a knife blade between them. Not a piece of paper, not a thin blade. The fit is that tight. The joints are virtually invisible. The faces of the stones are perfectly flat and square, cut with precision that rivals modern machinery. You can run your hand along the surface and feel no gaps, no irregularities, no imperfections. Around these massive blocks sit other stones, weighing 300 to 400 tons each, all positioned with equal precision. All around the platform, massive blocks, all precisely cut, all perfectly positioned. The entire platform represents a level of engineering achievement that surpasses anything built in the ancient world by orders of magnitude. Orders of magnitude. Nothing else comes close to Baalbek's scale and precision. Nearby in the quarry sits an enormous block known as the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, a fragment that was never extracted from the bedrock. It weighs an estimated 1,000 tons. 1,000 tons. The stone sits partially cut but still attached to the earth. It remains there to this day, testament to an abandoned project, an unfinished stone, a monument to something interrupted. Ancient workers apparently abandoned it mid-extraction, leaving it partially cut but attached to the stone. Why? Why would you abandon such a massive block? Why stop work on something so important? The conventional explanation suggests they encountered structural flaws and abandoned the block, deciding it wasn't suitable. But close examination reveals the extraction was proceeding flawlessly. The block was cut with a remarkable precision. The stone shows no defects. The quarrying technique was working perfectly. The abandonment appears arbitrary, almost as if the workers suddenly decided the block wasn't needed. Did they change their plans? Did something interrupt their work? Did they simply decide to move on to other projects? The answer is unknown, lost to history. Who built Baalbek? Who possessed the capability to quarry, transport and position these enormous stones? Who had the knowledge? The Romans? No. The temple structures were added during the Roman period, but they sit atop this massive platform that clearly predates Roman occupation. The Romans arrived to find the platform already there. They didn't build it. They incorporated it. They couldn't have built it. The Romans were certainly capable builders, but even they didn't construct foundations of this magnitude and precision anywhere else in their empire. You can travel throughout the Roman world and find temples and structures, aqueducts and fortifications, but nothing with foundations comparable to Baalbek. Nothing, nowhere. Instead, Roman temples at Baalbek and elsewhere simply incorporated the pre-existing platform, building their structures on top of it. They understood they couldn't replicate what was already there. They accepted it. They built upon it. They added to it. This suggests the platform was already ancient when the Romans arrived, already thousands of years old, already legendary. Archaeologists typically attribute it to the Phoenicians, but this explanation raises more questions than it answers. More questions, more mysteries. What about the Phoenicians' other structures? Where are the remains of their great building projects? Where are their quarries showing evidence of large-scale stone extraction? Where is evidence of their construction methods? Where are the intermediate stages? Where are the failed attempts? Why didn't they build anything else of similar scale anywhere in the ancient world? The Phoenicians were skilled traders and seafarers. History records their accomplishments in trade, in navigation, in commerce, but nothing in the archaeological record suggests they possessed the engineering knowledge and capability to quarry, transport, and position 800-ton blocks with millimetre precision. Yet at Baalbek, they apparently did exactly that, according to conventional history. Or did they? Could it be that Baalbek was built by a civilization far older than the Phoenicians, one that predated recorded history? A civilization we know almost nothing about, a civilization whose name is lost, a civilization erased from memory. Could this platform represent a structure built by that same advanced civilization that apparently left traces throughout the ancient world? The same civilization that left the Great Pyramid, the same people who carved the Sphinx, a unified advanced culture. The question becomes impossible to ignore when you examine the evidence. The stones of Baalbek are positioned with geodetic precision. They align with celestial coordinates. Their placement suggests knowledge of mathematics and astronomy that shouldn't have existed in the ancient world. The construction techniques employed show mastery of rock mechanics and engineering principles that modern researchers still struggle to fully explain. They still don't understand how it was done. They still can't replicate it. When engineers attempt to hypothesize how such blocks could be moved and positioned, they come up empty. No convincing theory emerges. No mechanism works. The methods available to ancient peoples seem utterly inadequate, utterly insufficient. The tools that could potentially work didn't exist. The mathematical knowledge required wasn't supposed to exist. The organizational capability needed seems impossible. Yet the platform exists. The stones are real, measurable, documented, undeniable. The precision is measurable and undeniable. And Baalbek stands as perhaps the most concrete example of an impossible achievement, a monument that refuses to fit into conventional timelines and conventional narratives about ancient civilizations. Far across the ancient world, in the high mountains of South America, stands another seemingly impossible structure. Another monument defying logic. Another achievement that challenges everything we believe about ancient civilizations. Puma Punku. We've already examined Baalbek and the Egyptian pyramids. We've already seen impossible precision in the Mediterranean and North Africa, but South America presents another challenge entirely. Another puzzle, another mystery, another impossible achievement. And this one might be even more difficult to explain than what came before it. More difficult, more challenging, more impossible. Puma Punku sits on a high-altitude plateau in Bolivia, more than 12,000 feet above sea level, in a region so remote and inhospitable that construction would be extraordinarily difficult even today. High altitude, thin air, difficult terrain, mountains surrounding it on all sides, peaks everywhere. Despite these challenges, ancient builders transported massive blocks of red granite and sandstone to this location and assembled them into a precise geometric pattern. A monument, a structure, a puzzle carved from stone. The site shows evidence of a level of engineering sophistication that rivals anything found in Egypt or the Mediterranean. Rivals, surpasses in some respects. The stones were cut with such precision that they fit together without mortar, the joints so tight that a knife blade cannot be inserted between them. Absolutely no gaps, no spaces, no room for error, no mortar needed. The blocks show evidence of tooling marks that suggest the use of advanced cutting implements far beyond what conventional history accepts was available to pre-Columbian civilizations. Advanced tools, sophisticated implements, technology that shouldn't have existed. The tooling marks on the stones at Puma Punku suggest the use of tools that could produce remarkably uniform cutting surfaces. Uniform surfaces, flat faces, precise dimensions. Engineer analysis of these marks indicates that they were made by tools capable of cutting through granite and andesite stone with consistent depth and precision. Consistent depth, precise angles, exact measurements. The stones show parallel sides, perpendicular angles, and flat surfaces that would be extremely difficult to achieve with primitive stone or copper tools. Extremely difficult, practically impossible, virtually unachievable. Yet these surfaces exist. They're real. They can be measured, they can be examined, they can be photographed. The evidence is physical and undeniable. What tools could have created these marks? What technology was employed? What knowledge did the builders possess? These questions have no satisfying answers from conventional archaeology. No explanation, no theory, no hypothesis that fits the evidence. The Inca are typically credited with building Pumapunku, yet this attribution faces serious problems, serious issues, unresolved questions, major contradictions. The Inca, when they arrived in the region, found Pumapunku already in ruins, already ancient, already a mystery, already sacred. They incorporated parts of it into their own structures, but the original construction predates them significantly, predates them by centuries, possibly predates them by millennia. The Inca themselves left detailed records of their construction methods, their labor systems, their organizational structures. Records exist, documents survive, chronicles remain. Yet no records exist of them building Pumapunku. No evidence, no documentation, no mention in their chronicles, no claim of construction, no statement of responsibility. Instead, they appeared to consider it a sacred site built by the gods or by a civilization that had vanished long before their own rise to power. The gods, ancient powers, beings with knowledge beyond human understanding, beings who could accomplish what ordinary humans could not. This is what they believed. This is what they recorded. This is what their traditions suggested. The precision of Pumapunku's stonework matches nothing else in the pre-Columbian Americas. Nothing else comes close. Nothing else demonstrates such exactness. The Nazca lines to the south displayed geometric precision, but they're drawings in the earth, not constructed monuments with massive stone blocks. Different skill set, different technology, different purpose. The Inca structures that do survive show impressive but significantly less precise craftsmanship. The blocks fit well, but not with the millimeter tolerances seen at Pumapunku, not with that level of exactness, not with that mathematical precision, not with that perfection. What civilization possessed the knowledge and capability to build at such altitude with such precision? Conventional archaeology has no satisfying answer, has no explanation, provides no credible theory, offers no convincing answer. Could Pumapunku be a structure built by the same advanced civilization that left traces around the world? The same people who built Baalbek? The same builders who created the precision of the Egyptian pyramids? A global advanced culture? A civilization whose monuments remain scattered across the planet? A unified people with unified knowledge? The possibility seems increasingly difficult to dismiss when you examine the evidence at Pumapunku. The geometric precision, the altitude challenge, the mystery of its actual construction, the lack of records, the Inca's own admission that they didn't build it. All of this points towards something older, something more sophisticated, something we've yet to fully understand. The blocks themselves tell a story, tell a history, contain information, contain secrets. Geological analysis shows some of the granite came from quarries over 100 kilometers away, transported uphill across extremely difficult terrain. 100 kilometers, transported uphill, without wheels, without roads, without beasts of burden suited to the altitude, without advanced machinery. And yet the blocks arrived at Pumapunku with such precision that they could be assembled into the geometric patterns we see today. With exactness, with perfection, with mathematical accuracy? How? How was it accomplished? What method was employed? What technology was utilized? What knowledge was possessed? How could they know where to position each block? How could they cut them so precisely? How could they transport such massive stones uphill? Conventional explanations involving ramps and rollers and rope teams seem utterly inadequate for the scale and precision of what was built. Utterly insufficient, completely unconvincing, fundamentally flawed. The engineering challenges alone would require planning, mathematical knowledge, and logistical capability that conventional history doesn't credit ancient South American civilizations with possessing, doesn't suggest they had, doesn't accept they could demonstrate, refuses to acknowledge. Yet the monument exists. The precision is measurable. The evidence is undeniable. The reality cannot be denied. Puma Punku stands as yet another impossible achievement, another monument that refuses to fit the accepted historical narrative, another puzzle, another mystery, another unexplained wonder, another trace of something lost. What pattern emerges when we consider Puma Punku alongside Baalbek? What does it mean that these sites are separated by continents, separated by oceans, yet share remarkable similarities? Similarities in precision, similarities in scale, similarities in astronomical alignment, similarities in the mystery surrounding their construction, similarities in the inability of conventional archaeology to explain them? If these sites were built by different civilizations using different methods and technologies, why do they demonstrate nearly identical levels of precision and sophistication? Why the similarities? Why the matches? Why the parallels? Why these shared characteristics? Could it be that a single advanced civilization, now forgotten by history, spread across the globe and left these monuments as markers of their presence? Could it be that human history contains a hidden chapter, a lost golden age, a time of knowledge and capability that was lost to catastrophe or decline? Could our understanding of human development be fundamentally flawed? Could our timelines be wrong? Could our assumptions about primitive ancient peoples be mistaken? Perhaps even more mysterious than the great stone monuments are structures that predate civilization itself. Structures that challenge our understanding of when human civilization actually began. Structures that suggest organized advanced societies existed far earlier than mainstream archaeology accepts, far earlier. Long before we thought, long before recorded history. Göbekli Tepe. Göbekli Tepe lies in southeastern Turkey, near the Syrian border, in a region that seems unlikely to have supported an advanced civilization. Unlikely terrain, unlikely location, unlikely circumstances, remote location, difficult geography. Yet approximately 11,500 years ago, someone built Göbekli Tepe. 11,500 years ago, before agriculture, before civilization, before writing, before organized societies supposedly existed, before any of this, before cities, before states, before kingdoms. The site contains massive T-shaped stone pillars, some weighing 16 tons each, arranged in circular patterns. Massive pillars, precise arrangements, organized structures, geometric patterns. These aren't crude or haphazard. These are carefully planned, deliberately constructed, thoughtfully arranged, carefully positioned. Some of the stones are carved with sophisticated artistic representations of animals and abstract designs. Artistic depictions, symbolic meaning, evidence of abstract thought, evidence of cultural expression, evidence of artistic mastery, evidence of religious practice. The precision of the stonework rivals that of structures built thousands of years later in Egypt and Mesopotamia. Rivals, matches, equals in sophistication, surpasses in some respects. What makes Göbekli Tepe especially significant is what it reveals about human organization and capability, about society, about knowledge, about planning, about coordination. The construction of Göbekli Tepe would have required hundreds, possibly thousands of workers, massive labor force, coordinated effort, organized system, complex organization. It would have required planning, resource management, and the ability to mobilize people toward a common goal. All of this supposedly thousands of years before civilization supposedly developed, thousands of years before. Long before writing, long before the Sumerian cities, long before the Egyptian pyramids, long before any accepted evidence of advanced civilization. Long before anything like this supposedly existed. The conventional narrative suggests that humans lived as hunter-gatherers in scattered bands until roughly 10,000 years ago, when agriculture developed in Mesopotamia. Then civilization followed, then complexity emerged, then society organized, then knowledge accumulated, then monuments were built. But Göbekli Tepe was built before agriculture, built before civilization, built before the supposed development of everything that would enable such construction. Built when humanity was supposedly still primitive. Built when humans supposedly lacked the organization. Built when humans supposedly lacked the knowledge. Built when humans supposedly lacked the capability. How? How did a supposedly primitive society construct monuments of this scale and precision? How did they organize thousands of workers? How did they coordinate effort? How did they plan and execute? Where did the knowledge come from? Where did the organizational capability originate? Where did the artistic capability come from? Where did the engineering knowledge originate? Conventional archaeology has struggled to answer these questions. Struggled, failed, been unable to provide satisfying explanations, offered no convincing answers, provided no credible theories. Some researchers have suggested Göbekli Tepe might be evidence of an earlier advanced civilization, one that predates the commonly accepted timeline of human development, one that was lost or declined before recorded history began, one that vanished, one that disappeared, before writing, before records, before memory. Traces of this civilization might persist in myths and legends, in vague references in ancient texts to a golden age, to gods walking among men, to a time of great knowledge and capability that was lost. Lost to catastrophe, lost to decline, lost to time, lost to forgetfulness. Lost to history. Legends speak of such times. Ancient texts hint at them. Religious traditions preserve fragments. Could Göbekli Tepe be one of the few remaining physical evidences of this lost civilization? Could it represent the work of a culture far more advanced than we've assumed existed at that time period? Could it challenge the entire conventional timeline of human development? Could it require us to completely rewrite the history books? The answer seems increasingly likely when you examine the site directly, when you measure the precision, when you contemplate the logistics, when you consider what would be required, when you think about the organization needed, when you calculate the labor required, when you contemplate the knowledge required. The evidence suggests that human civilization is far older than mainstream scholarship accepts, that advanced societies existed and built monuments we're only now discovering, and that our understanding of human history is fundamentally incomplete, fundamentally wrong, fundamentally challenged by the physical evidence that remains before us, fundamentally contradicted by what we find, fundamentally at odds with reality. If humans were building monuments like Göbekli Tepe 11,500 years ago, what does that mean for our understanding of the subsequent 9,000 years of history? What happened in that gap? Did civilization advance continuously from Göbekli Tepe to recorded history? Or is there something missing? Is there a gap in our knowledge? Is there something we don't understand? If such sophisticated structures existed before agriculture, before writing, before civilization, as we understand it, then what does that say about our assumptions? What does it mean? What should we reconsider? Could there have been a great catastrophe that erased much of this earlier civilization? Could there have been a global disaster that reset human society? Could there be evidence of this in mythologies and religious texts that speak of great floods and divine punishments? Could these myths preserve memories of real events? Could they contain historical truth wrapped in religious language? Across the Atlantic, on the misty island of Britain, stands another enigma, another impossible structure, another monument that shouldn't exist according to conventional understanding. Another mystery wrapped in stone. Stonehenge. Stonehenge sits on the Salisbury Plain in southern England, a ring of massive stone blocks arranged with apparent astronomical significance. Massive blocks, arranged carefully, positioned precisely, aligned deliberately. The site has captivated people for centuries, inspiring theories and debates about its true purpose and construction. Theories abound, explanations multiply, speculations persist, yet none satisfactorily explain the evidence. The monument consists of an outer ring of sarsen stones, some weighing up to 25 tons each, topped with horizontal lintels, fitted so precisely they formed almost waterproof joints. Waterproof joints, in stone, incredible precisio, impossible precision. The lintels sit atop the uprights, so exactly that water cannot penetrate the joint, cannot flow through, cannot find a path. This level of precision in stone joinery is remarkable. The sarsen stones were quarried from the Marlborough Downs, roughly 25 kilometres away from the site, 25 kilometres, transported overland, across difficult terrain, across rolling landscape, over hills and valleys. The bluestone, smaller but equally significant components of Stonehenge, came from Wales, over 200 kilometres away. 200 kilometres from Wales transported to Stonehenge, from such distance, from the distant mountains, from across the entire island. How? How were 25-ton blocks transported across such distances without modern machinery, without wheeled vehicle, without advanced transportation systems, without modern technology, without modern equipment? Conventional explanations involve teams of workers using wooden sledges and ropes, sliding the stones across log rollers. Wooden sledges, log rollers, ropes and determination. Perhaps, maybe, theoretically, speculatively. Yet no archaeological evidence supports this method. No evidence remains. No traces of the necessary infrastructure. No records document the process. No written accounts describe it. The method remains mysterious. The logistics defy explanation. The engineering challenges seem insurmountable. What makes Stonehenge even more puzzling is its astronomical alignment, its precise alignment, its mathematical accuracy, its celestial synchronization. The stone circle aligns with the summer solstice sunrise and the winter solstice sunset with remarkable precision. Remarkable, exact, undeniable, verifiable, measurable. The alignment is so precise that it appears to have been deliberately engineered to align with these specific celestial events. Deliberately engineered, intentionally designed, carefully planned. The builders would have needed to observe the sun's movements across the sky for extended periods. Years of observation, decades of careful measurement, hundreds of observation points. They would have needed to calculate the precise angles required, calculate the geometry, determine the measurements, work out the mathematics. Then they would have needed to construct the monument to match these calculations exactly. Match the calculations, achieve the precision, build to specifications, build to measurements, all without modern surveying instruments, without theodolites, without mathematical tables, without written calculations. Yet they succeeded. They achieved the alignment, they built it correctly. The evidence of this success is visible even today, thousands of years later. This suggests that whoever built Stonehenge possessed sophisticated astronomical knowledge and mathematics. Knowledge, understanding, calculation, observation, long-term observation. They understood celestial mechanics and could translate those observations into terrestrial construction. Translate astronomical knowledge into stone. Convert cosmic understanding into physical reality. This is no accident. This is intentional. This is planned. This is deliberate. Yet who built Stonehenge? Conventional archaeology attributes it to Bronze Age peoples. Yet evidence of their other structures, their settlements, their artifacts, shows nothing approaching the sophistication of Stonehenge. Shows nothing comparable. Shows nothing matching. Shows nothing approaching such precision. Shows no equivalent achievement. The precision and astronomical knowledge displayed at Stonehenge seems anomalous when compared with other Bronze Age artifacts and structures. Anomalous, unusual, unexplained, inexplicable, inconsistent with what we know of Bronze Age capabilities. Could Stonehenge be much older than the conventional timeline suggests? Could it be much older? Could it be built by a civilization that predates the Bronze Age peoples of Britain? Could it be evidence of the same global advanced culture that left monuments at Baalbek, Pumapunku, and Göbekli Tepe? Could it be part of a pattern? Could it be connected to that larger civilization? Could it represent their work? The evidence certainly suggests this possibility, certainly hints at it, certainly implies it, certainly points in that direction, certainly supports this theory. The precision of Stonehenge's construction, the astronomical knowledge it displays, the logistical challenges of its construction, and the lack of satisfying explanations for how ancient peoples could have built it all point toward a hidden history of human civilization. A history we've overlooked, a history we don't fully understand, a history that contradicts much of what mainstream archaeology accepts as true, a history that challenges our assumptions, a history that forces us to reconsider everything. Stonehenge stands on the English landscape as testament to that hidden history, a monument built by minds we've yet to fully comprehend, constructed with knowledge and capability that shouldn't have existed according to conventional timelines. Knowledge we don't understand, capability we can't explain, power we can't replicate. When we step back and look at the global pattern, the picture becomes even more striking, more remarkable, more extraordinary. We have Stonehenge in Britain demonstrating astronomical knowledge and engineering precision. We have Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, dating back 11,500 years with massive stone structures. We have Baalbek in Lebanon with 800-ton blocks fitted with millimetre precision. We have Pumapunku in Bolivia at high altitude with perfect stone joinery. We have the Great Pyramid in Egypt with precision mathematics. We have the Sphinx showing evidence of water erosion from 12,000 years ago. We have Sacsayhuaman in Peru with earthquake-resistant joints. All of these sites demonstrate remarkably similar characteristics, similar precision, similar sophistication, similar astronomical alignment, similar mysteries, similar resistance to conventional explanation, similar inability to be replicated with the tools supposedly available, similar defiance of logical explanation. What are the odds of this? What is the probability? Consider that each of these sites exists separated by vast distances, built in different eras according to conventional chronology, constructed by supposedly distinct civilizations with no contact or communication. The statistical probability that they would all independently develop nearly identical engineering solutions, nearly identical levels of precision, nearly identical astronomical knowledge, is staggeringly low, impossibly low, virtually zero. Is it possible that all of these could have been built independently by different civilizations using different methods, all achieving nearly identical levels of precision and knowledge? Is it possible? Could it be coincidence? Could they all independently develop astronomical knowledge? Could they all independently develop the same engineering solutions? Could they all independently decide to align their structures with celestial bodies? Could it all be chance, or is the simpler explanation that they were all built by the same advanced civilization, built by one people, built by one culture, built by one knowledge system, built according to one worldview, built with one vision, built with unified intent. That would certainly explain the similarities. That would explain the shared characteristics. That would explain why these sites, separated by continents and oceans, seem to speak the same architectural language. The same technical language, the same engineering language, the same mathematical language. In the mountains of Peru stands another structure that defies conventional explanation and challenges everything we believe about ancient construction. Another impossible achievement, another puzzle, another mystery, another wonder. Sacsayhuaman. Sacsayhuaman overlooks the Inca city of Cusco from above, a fortress or ceremonial center constructed from enormous blocks of stone fitted together with such precision that the joints are virtually invisible. Virtually invisible. Impossibly tight, remarkably precise, geometrically exact. The stones fit with such tightness that you cannot see the seams. The eye cannot detect the joints, the hand cannot find the cracks. No mortar was used, yet the blocks remain so tightly fitted that they've survived centuries of earthquakes that repeatedly damaged structures built with conventional mortar joints. Earthquakes, severe earthquakes, powerful earthquakes. The region experiences significant seismic activity. Earthquakes that would destroy other buildings, earthquakes that have destroyed other structures. Yet Sacsayhuaman's walls remain intact, remain standing, remain uncracked, remain undamaged. This is remarkable. This is extraordinary. This is virtually impossible, because stones mortared together would typically suffer severe damage in such earthquakes. Damage, cracks, failure, separation of stones. Yet dry-fitted stones of incredible precision can flex slightly and resettle without cracking, which is precisely what happens at Sacsayhuaman. The stones move with the earth, they shift, they resettle, they find their positions again. The mechanism is understood, the engineering principle is sound, yet the execution required knowledge and precision that seems beyond what conventional history credits Inca stoneworkers with possessing, credits them with, suggests they had, accepts they demonstrated, acknowledges they possessed. The Inca themselves, in their own chronicles and records, attributed Sacsayhuaman to their ancestors or to the ancient builders who came before them. Builders who came before, ancient people, unknown civilization, lost civilization. This is what they recorded. This is what they believed. This is what their traditions suggest. This is what their oral history preserves. They understood that they had not built it. They recognized that they could not have built it. They acknowledged that it was beyond their capability. They admitted that it was the work of someone else, someone from the past, someone far more ancient, someone far more capable, someone who possessed knowledge they did not possess. This admission in their own chronicles is remarkable. Remarkable testimony, significant testimony, direct evidence from the Inca themselves that Sacsayhuaman predated them. Some of the blocks at Sacsayhuaman weigh over 200 tons. 200 tons, enormous, massive, staggering weight. Some sources suggest even larger blocks exist at the site. Some researchers document blocks weighing even more. The largest stones may exceed 300 tons. The Inca structures that we know they built, the sites we can trace to their documented construction efforts, show impressive but significantly less precise stonework. Less precise, less tight, less perfect, less exact. The stones at Sacsayhuaman fit together with such exactness that a knife blade cannot be inserted between them. A knife blade, no gaps, no spaces, no mortar needed, no cement required. The fit is so perfect that no binding agent is necessary. The stones hold together through geometry alone. This level of precision suggests mastery of stone cutting and placement that seems to exceed what the Inca demonstrated in other verified construction projects. Exceeds, surpasses, goes beyond, transcends. The Inca built other impressive structures, but none with this level of precision, none with joints so tight, none with stones so perfectly shaped. Could Sacsayhuaman be older than Inca construction? Could it be built by an earlier civilization? Could it be another trace of the advanced global culture that built similar monuments around the world? Could it be part of the pattern? Could it be connected to Baalbek, Pumapunku, Stonehenge, and Göbekli Tepe? Could it be all one civilization's work? Could it all be one people's achievement? The evidence certainly hints at this possibility. The Incas' own statement suggests they didn't build it originally. The precision exceeds other Inca work. The scale challenges conventional explanations. The joints are tighter than anything else they constructed. The mystery persists. The questions remain unanswered. The truth remains hidden beneath layers of conventional history and scholarly consensus that may be fundamentally incomplete, fundamentally wrong, fundamentally challenged by the evidence. Sacsayhuaman stands on the mountain above Cusco, silent testimony to a chapter of human history that we've yet to fully understand. A monument to lost knowledge, a symbol of forgotten capability, a reminder of what we don't know about our past. The questions that Sacsayhuaman raises are the same questions raised by every impossible megalithic site we've examined. Same mysteries, same puzzles, same impossibilities, same defiance of conventional explanation. How? Who? When? Why? These basic questions remain unanswered. The conventional explanations fail to convince when you examine the evidence directly. The evidence contradicts the narrative. The physical reality contradicts the theory. The monuments themselves testify to something beyond what mainstream archaeology is willing to acknowledge. What if we accepted the evidence as it presents itself, rather than forcing it into a pre-existing narrative? What if we allowed the monuments to speak for themselves? What if we followed the evidence wherever it leads, rather than defending established positions? What if we approach these sites with genuine openness, rather than institutional defensiveness? What would we discover? What truths would we uncover? What hidden history would emerge? The answer is becoming increasingly clear as we examine site after site, monument after monument, evidence piling upon evidence. Something is wrong with our understanding. Something is missing from our history. Something has been overlooked, ignored, or deliberately hidden, and the monuments themselves are the testimony to this truth. On a remote island in the Pacific Ocean sit enormous stone statues that pose perhaps the most perplexing logistical mystery of all the impossible megalithic sites, perhaps the most mysterious, perhaps the most baffling, perhaps the most inexplicable, perhaps the most impossible to explain. Easter Island's moai. The moai, these massive stone figures, some weighing up to 80 tons, were carved from volcanic tuff and transported across the island to ceremonial platforms. Transported, moved, positioned precisely. How they were transported remains one of archaeology's greatest unsolved mysteries. Greatest mystery, deepest puzzle, most frustrating enigma, the most vexing question. The conventional explanation involves teams of workers using ropes to drag the statues across wooden rollers. Ropes, wooden rollers, teams of workers. Perhaps, maybe, possibly, theoretically. Yet no archaeological evidence supports this method. No traces remain of the infrastructure required. No remnants exist, no archaeological record shows. No documentation exists describing the process. No written accounts document it. No records describe it. The method remains speculative. The explanation remains unproven. The theory remains without evidence. What makes the Moai mystery even more significant is that Easter Island is incredibly remote, isolated, extremely isolated, among the most remote locations on Earth. The island lies nearly 2,000 miles from the nearest significant population centre. Miles away, isolated from the world, isolated from taking help, isolated from resources, isolated from support, isolated from trade. The resources required to move 80-ton blocks across such a remote island would be extraordinary, immense, staggering. The logistics alone would challenge modern engineers, challenge them, strain them, tax their capabilities, stretch their abilities, test their knowledge, test their resources. Yet the Moai exist, they're real, they're there. They were built and transported and positioned. The evidence is undeniable. The evidence is visible. The evidence is measurable. The mystery deepens when you consider that the Moai represent an enormous investment of cultural resources, labour, time, materials, organisation, energy, effort. Why? Why build 80-ton statues on a remote island with limited resources? Why expend so much effort? Why invest so much labour? Why carve such massive statues? What motivated the effort? What cultural imperative drove people to expend such resources on creating and transporting these monuments? What belief system demanded it? What religion required it? What purpose did it serve? Could the Moai be remnants of contact with a more advanced civilization? Could they represent teachings or technique US inherited from an earlier culture? Could they be part of the global pattern of impossible megalithic sites left by an advanced civilization whose knowledge and capability we've yet to fully understand? Could they be connected to Baalbek, Pumapunku, Stonehenge, Sacsayhuaman, and Göbekli Tepe? Could they all be part of one vast network of monuments? Could they represent one advanced civilization's work distributed globally? Could there be a connection? Could there be a pattern? These questions remain unanswered, remain mysterious, remain frustratingly unresolved, remain deeply puzzling, remain fundamentally unexplained. The Moai stand on Easter Island slopes as silent witnesses to a mystery that conventional archaeology has failed to adequately explain. Silent sentinels, mysterious guardians, enigmatic figures, testimony to knowledge we don't possess, monuments to capability we don't understand, evidence of something greater than we've acknowledged. Over 890 Moai have been discovered on Easter Island, 890 statues, hundreds upon hundreds of these enormous figures. How long would it have taken to carve 890 statues weighing 80 tons each? How many workers? How much time? How much effort? And that's just the carving. That's just the initial creation. Then they had to be transported across the landscape, transported to specific locations, positioned on platforms, arranged deliberately, oriented precisely. Why would a remote island population expend such enormous resources on creating and positioning hundreds of enormous statues? Why would they invest so much labour? Why would they commit so much effort? What belief system demanded this? What purpose did it serve? What did it accomplish? One theory suggests that the construction of the Moai consumed so many resources that it contributed to the island's eventual collapse. That the effort of building these statues exhausted the island's resources, led to deforestation, environmental degradation, and ultimately societal failure. A civilization that built too much too fast and destroyed itself in the process. But this still doesn't answer how they did it. This still doesn't explain the method. This still doesn't address the logistics. If Polynesian peoples with limited technology built 890 enormous statues and transported them across an island without wheels or advanced machinery, how? How did they do it? What was the method? What technology did they employ? The conventional explanation of ropes and rollers seems inadequate for the sheer scale of what was accomplished. The answer may be that they didn't build them alone, that they didn't develop the technology independently, that they inherited the knowledge from someone else, that they learned the technique from an earlier culture, that they inherited the ability, that the Moai represent not the innovation of Easter Island's population, but rather the persistence of an older technological tradition passed down through generations, passed down, preserved, maintained, sustained, a tradition from before, a knowledge system from the past, a memory of an earlier advanced civilization. When we consider all 5 of these monumentally impossible sites together, a picture emerges that challenges fundamental assumptions about human history. A picture that suggests something extraordinary. A narrative that contradicts everything we've been taught. These monuments, separated by continents and oceans, built in vastly different environments and climates, constructed by supposedly unconnected civilizations, all display the same remarkable characteristics. All demonstrate precision, all show mathematical sophistication, all suggest astronomical knowledge, all testify to advanced engineering capability, all refuse to fit into conventional timelines, all raise questions that mainstream archaeology cannot adequately answer. The probability that all of these sites were built independently by different civilizations, using different methods, achieving nearly identical levels of precision, is extraordinarily low. Extraordinarily. The odds approach 0. The likelihood becomes virtually impossible. The more plausible explanation is that they were all built by the same advanced civilization. A civilization now lost to history. A culture forgotten by time. A people whose memory has been erased. They may have spread across the globe, leaving monuments as markers of their presence. They may have deliberately encoded knowledge into stone, creating monuments that would survive millennia, testaments to their achievement that would outlast their civilization. They may have understood that their civilization would not endure, that catastrophe or decline would claim them, but that their knowledge could persist in stone, could be preserved in monuments, could survive in the very structures they built. And we're only now beginning to discover these monuments, to study them, to wonder at them. We're only now recognizing the pattern. We're only now beginning to ask the right questions. We're only now willing to consider possibilities that challenge established paradigms. But we're still holding back. We're still defensive. We're still protecting institutional interests and academic reputations, protecting careers, protecting positions, protecting established authority. The truth about human history might be far more complex, far more ancient, and far more extraordinary than we've been willing to admit. The monuments themselves seem to be shouting this truth at us, if only we would listen. Ollantaytambo, the megalithic quarry puzzle. In the mountains of Peru, not far from the more famous site of Machu Picchu, sits another impossible structure that challenges everything we think we know about ancient construction. Another puzzle, another mystery, another monument that doesn't fit the conventional narrative. Ollantaytambo. Ollantaytambo is remarkable not just for what was built, but for how it was built and where the materials came from. The site contains enormous blocks of granite quarried from a mountainside that lies several miles away. Miles away, not hundreds of meters, not a short distance, miles. The blocks were cut from a quarry located at a significantly higher elevation than the temple site itself. Higher elevation, uphill, against gravity. The blocks then had to be transported downhill, across difficult terrain, through valleys and over ridges, to reach their final position at Ollantaytambo. How? How was this accomplished? What method was used? What technique could move such enormous stones across such challenging geography? The conventional explanation involves teams of workers, wooden sledges, and stone rollers. Stone rollers, wooden sledges. Perhaps, maybe, theoretically. But here's where the conventional explanation begins to fracture. The largest blocks at the quarry site weigh up to 200 tons. 200 tons. And some researchers document stones that may be even larger. The blocks were cut with such precision that they fit together at the Ollantaytambo site without mortar, without cement, without binding agents. The joints are so tight that they remain in place through geometry alone. The engineering required to transport such massive stones downhill without losing control, without tumbling end over end, without crushing, would be extraordinarily complex, extraordinarily, practically impossible. What equipment would be required? What systems would be needed? What safety mechanisms would prevent disaster? The conventional explanation offers none of these details, offers no mechanism, provides no method. The logistics would dwarf the effort of moving quarried blocks uphill, as at other sites. Moving downhill creates different challenges, different problems, different obstacles. The stones could accelerate, they could gain momentum, they could become uncontrollable. Without modern braking systems, without engineering controls, without mechanical advantage, how could ancient peoples have managed such an undertaking? The answer conventional archaeology provides is essentially, we don't know. We don't know. We have no explanation. We cannot account for it. We offer no mechanism. We simply accept that it was done and move on. But moving on from such a fundamental mystery seems inadequate. The construction of Ollantaytambo suggests that the builders possessed knowledge of logistics, engineering, and stone management that seems to exceed what historians credit them with possessing. Exceeds, surpasses, goes beyond, transcends conventional understanding. The Inca themselves, according to their records, built Ollantaytambo during the reign of Pachacuti Inca Yupanqui in the 15th century. 15th century. This is relatively recent in archaeological terms, yet the construction methods they supposedly used seem inadequate for what was accomplished. Inadequate, insufficient, unconvincing. Other Inca sites, which we know they built because of clear historical records and documented construction, show different construction techniques, different methods, different approaches, different standards of precision. Not all Inca stonework matches the exactness of Ollantaytambo. Some is crude, some is rough, some lacks the precision. The question naturally arises, if the Inca built Ollantaytambo, why does it exceed the precision and sophistication of other verified Inca construction? Why this one site? Why this level of excellence? Why such precision in this location? Could Ollantaytambo, like Sacsayhuaman, represent earlier construction that was later incorporated or modified by the Inca? Could it be evidence of the same advanced civilization that left traces at other sites? Could it be another piece of the global pattern of impossible megalithic monuments? The evidence certainly suggests these possibilities, suggests them, hints at them, points toward them. The geological analysis of the stone at the quarry shows a different composition than the blocks placed at the temple. Different composition, different source rock, different geological origin. This suggests that multiple quarries were used, or that the quarry site contains deposits of varying stone types. But the precision remains uniform. The joinery remains exact. The fit remains perfect. Throughout the variation in material, the execution remains flawless, remains perfect, remains exact. This suggests not just superior knowledge of stone, but also superior knowledge of structural principles, superior understanding, superior engineering, superior capability. The water management systems at Ollantaytambo present another puzzle. Water channels, drainage systems, flood management. The site demonstrates sophisticated understanding of hydrology and water control. Sophisticated, advanced, knowledgeable. The channels are positioned and angled to direct water flow in specific ways, specific patterns, specific directions. Controlled movement. This requires mathematical knowledge and engineering understanding. Mathematical knowledge, engineering understanding, geometric calculation. The level of sophistication suggests that whoever designed these systems understood not just the immediate site, but also seasonal water patterns, rainfall variations, and long-term hydrological effects. Long-term thinking, planning, foresight. These attributes suggest a civilization with sustained settlements, accumulated knowledge, and generational commitment to understanding natural systems. Could such knowledge have been inherited? Could it have been passed down? Could the Inca have learned these techniques from an earlier civilization and simply maintained what was already built? The temple itself at Ollantaytambo contains more than 200 carefully positioned blocks, each fitting into its neighbours with astounding exactness. Astounding exactness, incredible precision, nearly impossible accuracy. The blocks were not just stacked on top of each other, but were positioned on sloped foundations, suggesting advanced understanding of load distribution and structural stability. Advanced understanding, knowledge of engineering principles, comprehension of physics. Modern architects studying the site have expressed amazement at how earthquake-resistant the structure remains. Earthquake-resistant, stable, enduring, structures built with such knowledge and precision would survive the massive seismic events that periodically strike Peru. They have survived. They continue to stand. They persist through the centuries, despite powerful earthquakes that have destroyed nearby buildings made with modern materials and methods. What drives one civilization to build with precision that another civilization cannot replicate with its superior technology? What knowledge lies behind such capability? What understanding makes such feats possible? These questions hang over Ollantaytambo as they hang over every impossible megalithic site, demanding answers that conventional archaeology struggles to provide. Karnak stones, the forgotten alignment. These, on the coast of Brittany in northwestern France, stands another mysterious monument that defies easy explanation, another impossible structure, another alignment of inexplicable stones, another monument that seems out of place in conventional history. The Karnak stones. The Karnak stones consist of thousands of standing stones, arranged in nearly perfect parallel lines stretching for nearly 3 miles across the landscape. Nearly 3 miles, thousands of stones, thousands. The stones vary in height from small 2-metre stones to massive 10-metre monoliths. Some weigh several tons. Some are enormous, some are colossal. The arrangement is so precise that the rows appear almost mechanical. Mechanical, uniform, exact. The stones are arranged in lines that maintain precise spacing and alignment. Precise spacing, exact alignment, mathematical precision. Some of the rows contain more than 1,000 stones each. 1,000 stones, organised, deliberate. The rows are not random. They are not haphazard. They follow patterns, they follow logic, they follow mathematical rules. What was the purpose of these stones? What did they accomplish? What function did they serve? Conventional archaeology offers several theories, none entirely convincing. Some suggest they were part of a ceremonial avenue, a sacred pathway, a ritual route. Others propose they served agricultural or boundary functions. Boundary markers, agricultural boundaries, land division. Yet others suggest astronomical alignments, celestial connections, star patterns. But the scale of the effort would be extraordinary for any of these purposes. Extraordinary effort, massive investment, enormous commitment. Thousands of stones arranged precisely over 3 miles suggests something more significant than boundary markers or ceremonial decoration. Suggests something greater, suggests something more important, suggests something more enduring. The stones were quarried locally, so transportation wasn't as challenging as at some other sites. Local quarrying, regional resources, available materials, yet quarrying, moving and precisely positioning thousands of stones would require enormous organisation, labour coordination and long-term commitment. Long-term commitment, sustained effort, coordinated labour. The local tribes occupying Brittany during the Neolithic period, when these stones are dated to, supposedly lacked the organisational capability to undertake such a project. Supposedly lacked, supposedly couldn't, supposedly wouldn't, yet the stones exist. They're real. They're measurable. They're arranged with precision that suggests intentional design. The archaeological evidence suggests that multiple generations worked on the Karnak stones, adding to and modifying the alignment over centuries or even longer. Multiple generations, sustained effort, long-term project. This suggests that the cultural imperative driving the construction persisted across generations, persisted, continued, endured. What belief system would demand such commitment? What purpose would justify such investment? What goal would motivate such effort? The stones align with certain celestial bodies at specific times of year. Celestial alignment, astronomical connection, star patterns. The southern rows point toward the winter solstice sunrise. The northern rows point toward the summer solstice sunset. These astronomical alignments suggest that whoever designed the Karnak stones possessed sophisticated astronomical knowledge. Astronomical knowledge, celestial observation, mathematical understanding. To create such precise alignments, with stones scattered across 3 miles of landscape, would require extensive surveying, mathematical calculation, and understanding of how the sky moves across seasons and years. Extensive surveying, mathematical calculation, astronomical understanding. Modern archaeologists have attempted to replicate the survey techniques that would have been necessary to create such alignments using primitive tools and methods. Attempted to replicate, tried to understand, sought to comprehend. Even with modern knowledge and instruments, reproducing such alignments with hand-D tools would be extraordinarily difficult. Practically impossible, virtually unachievable. The conventional theory attributes the Karnak stones to Neolithic peoples. Neolithic, pre-Bronze Age, early populations. Yet the astronomical knowledge they supposedly possessed contradicts what we know about Neolithic societies in northwestern Europe. Contradicts, conflicts with, opposes. These societies supposedly lacked writing, lacked mathematics, lacked the astronomical observation capability that the Karnak stones clearly demonstrate. No written records document their astronomical knowledge. No mathematical texts preserve their calculations. No evidence supports their possession of such understanding. The stones might have been modified or reused by later peoples. Modified, reused, adapted. The Celts, who lived in Brittany in later periods, had strong stone and monument traditions. Stone circles, standing stones, monuments. Yet the precision of the Karnak alignment seems to exceed other Celtic monuments in the region. Surpasses in sophistication. The Celtic monuments, which we can trace historically, lack the mathematical precision of Karnak. Demonstrate less, show inferior. Celtic structures are impressive, but not perfectly aligned, not astronomically precise, not mathematically exact. Could the Karnak stones, like so many other impossible monuments, represent the work of an earlier advanced civilization? Could they be another trace of the same global culture that left monuments worldwide? Could they be evidence of knowledge that was lost when that civilization vanished? The precision, the scale, the astronomical alignment, the organizational effort required, all of these point towards something beyond what conventional history attributes to Neolithic Brittany. Point toward, suggest, indicate, imply. The mystery of the Karnak stones remains unsolved, adding to the growing list of impossible monuments that challenge everything we believe about human history. And yet, the public knows little about these stones. Few people visit them. Fewer people study them. The world largely ignores this 3-mile alignment of thousands of precisely placed stones. The gatekeeper problem. Whenever we discuss these impossible monuments and the mysteries surrounding them, one pattern emerges consistently. One problem. One fundamental obstacle. One barrier to understanding. We encounter gatekeepers, controllers of information, guardians of established narratives, people and institutions that control access to sites, regulate research, and determine what the public learns about these mysteries. This is not unique to Egypt. This gatekeeper problem appears worldwide, across continents, in multiple countries, affecting multiple sites. In Egypt, Dr. Zahi Hawass controlled access to the pyramids for decades. His decisions shaped what could be studied. His approvals determined what research would be conducted. His word was final. In Peru, authorities limit arresti, at Machu Picchu, and restrict what excavations can examine. Restrict, control, determine. In Turkey, Göbekli Tepe has been heavily controlled and access limited. The pattern repeats. The pattern emerges everywhere. The same control, the same limitation, the same restriction. Why? Why is access restricted? Why are some researchers denied permission to investigate? Why are certain excavations shut down? Why are some discoveries kept from the public? Why would authorities restrict investigation of sites that would benefit from scientific study? The standard explanation is preservation. Preservation of sites, protection from damage, safeguarding of archaeological heritage. This seems reasonable, seems logical, seems justified, but is it the complete explanation? Is it the full story? Is I at the whole truth, or is there something else? Consider this. If these sites were truly protected for preservation purposes, would authorities not want the best scientists studying them? Would they not welcome international expertise? Would they not encourage the most advanced technology to examine and understand these monuments? Yet the opposite pattern emerges. The opposite occurs. The reverse happens. Access is restricted precisely when it could be most beneficial. Precisely. Exactly. At the critical moment, when breakthroughs approach, when understanding grows, then gates close. Consider the timing. Consider when restrictions increase. Consider what happens when researchers approach breakthrough discoveries. At Giza, Robert Bauval's Orion correlation theory gained attention, challenging established chronologies. The theory was well researched. The theory was published. The theory was gaining scientific credibility. Then restrictions increased, tightened, got stricter. Gantenbrink's door was sealed. His investigation halted. Further exploration blocked. Blocked, forbidden, prohibited. The camera was withdrawn. The research was stopped. The findings were not made public. Why? Why halt an investigation? At that critical moment, what was being protected? When the Muon radiography team discovered the massive void, calls for exploration intensified. The void was enormous. The void was unexpected. The void suggested the pyramid contained secrets, yet undiscovered. Then restrictions were reinstated, reasserted, re-established. Further investigation forbidden. Additional scanning prohibited. The void remains unexplored. To this day, still mysterious, still sealed. In Peru, when researchers began documenting the sophistication of sites like Ollantaytambo and Sacsayhuaman, access became more controlled, more restricted, more limited. Permits became harder to obtain. Permissions became more difficult to secure. Research teams were denied access. Why? Why restrict investigation of Peruvian sites when researchers pose no danger? Why protect sites from study? In Turkey, Göbekli Tepe's excavation was halted at a critical moment, with minimal explanation, few details, limited information. The site continues to be carefully controlled. Access is limited. Investigation is restricted. The pattern suggests that restrictions often follow periods of intense scientific interest or discoveries that might challenge established narratives. Might challenge? Potentially challenge. Could challenge. As if authorities worry about what might be found. Worry, fear, concern, dread. What if unrestricted investigation revealed something that fundamentally altered our understanding of human history? What if archaeologists were allowed to freely examine these sites? What truths would emerge? What discoveries would challenge everything? The mechanism of gatekeeping operates through several channels. Funding control. A researcher needs permits to dig. Permits require approval from authorities. Approval depends on permits. Funding depends on approval. Without permits, no funding. Without funding, no research. Without research, no discoveries. Without discoveries, no challenge to established narratives. The system is self-reinforcing, self-perpetuating, self-sustaining. A researcher with controversial ideas finds it nearly impossible to obtain permits. Nearly impossible. Practically impossible. Virtually excluded. Yet a researcher proposing conventional explanations finds approvals relatively easy. Easy, straightforward, readily granted. The message is clear. The incentive is obvious. The direction is set. Study the conventional narrative and receive support. Question the established story and face barriers. Another mechanism involves publication suppression. Suppression, censorship, blocking of information. If controversial discoveries are made, they can be dismissed, delayed, or prevented from reaching academic journals and public awareness. Dismissed, delayed, prevented, kept from public view, kept hidden, kept secret. A researcher publishes findings that challenge established views. The findings are peer-reviewed. Peer review. Academic scrutiny, but the reviewers are gatekeepers themselves. They are invested in the conventional narrative. They built their careers on existing paradigms. Will they objectively evaluate work that challenges what they've spent decades promoting? Will they? Likely not. The mechanisms are subtle, quiet, not obvious, plausible deniability. A researcher's work is declared not sufficiently rigorous. Another's methodology is questioned. A third's conclusions are labelled speculative. These judgments might be fair, might be accurate, might be justified, or they might be gatekeeping disguised as academic rigour. Gatekeeping, control, suppression. The gatekeepers protect gatekeeping. They enforce gatekeeping. They maintain gatekeeping. What would happen if researchers were allowed unrestricted access to these sites? What would they discover? What truths might emerge? What would challenge the established narratives? The gatekeepers seem to fear finding out. Seem to fear. Appear to fear. Seem concerned. Terrified, perhaps. Of what might be revealed. Of what might be proven. Of what might require history to be rewritten. Why would authorities fear the truth? Why would they resist scientific investigation? Why would they restrict access if there's nothing hidden? If there's nothing hidden, if the conventional narratives are correct, then investigation should confirm this, should validate, should support. The established story should survive scrutiny, survive examination, survive investigation. Truth fears nothing. Truth welcomes investigation. Truth stands up to scrutiny. Yet the opposite pattern appears. The pattern suggests that some authorities prefer that certain questions not be asked. Prefer. Wish, want, desire. They prefer that some sites remain partially unexplored. They prefer that some discoveries remain unmade. They prefer that the conventional narrative remain unexamined. They prefer that assumptions go unquestioned. The motivations might vary, differ. Could be national pride. Pride in believing Egypt built the pyramids without outside influence. Could be institutional reputation. Reputations built on conventional archaeological views. Could be academic careers built on existing paradigms. Entire careers, decades of work, publications and reputations, all built on conventional understanding. Could be unwillingness to admit that previous understandings were incomplete or incorrect, incomplete, flawed, wrong. Could be bureaucratic inertia, institutional inertia, fear of change. Could be simple resistance to change. Change is uncomfortable. Change threatens established order. Could be fear of what might be discovered. Real fear, deep fear, existential fear. The fear that everything we thought we knew might be wrong. But the result is the same regardless of motivation. The result is, the outcome is, the consequence is, information is controlled, research is restricted, curiosity is discouraged, questions are suppressed, the public remains ignorant, remains unaware, remains uninformed, remains in darkness. This gatekeeper problem represents one of the greatest obstacles to understanding human history. Greatest obstacle, major barrier, fundamental impediment, immovable wall, until researchers are allowed genuine unrestricted access to these sites. Unless if, and until the gatekeepers are willing to genuinely consider alternative explanations, consider them, examine them, evaluate them, assess them, without bias, without prejudice, without protecting established positions. We will never know the complete truth about who built these monuments and how they were built. We will remain trapped in ignorance, trapped by gatekeepers, prevented from discovering the truth about our own history, our own past, our own origins. Alternative theories and evidence. Beyond the conventional explanations that mainstream archaeology offers, researchers have proposed alternative theories that, while controversial, deserve serious consideration. Merit examination, warrant evaluation. One theory, developed and championed by researcher Eric von Däniken and others, suggests that extraterrestrial visitors may have influenced the construction of megalithic monuments, influenced, taught, guided, provided knowledge. The theory proposes that advanced alien civilizations visited Earth in the distant past and shared knowledge with developing human societies. Shared knowledge, provided technology, gave guidance. This theory immediately encounters resistance from mainstream academia. Immediate resistance, strong rejection, dismissal, yet proponents point to intriguing evidence, suggestive hints, tantalizing clues. Ancient artworks at various sites seem to depict beings that don't appear human, appear unusual, appear otherworldly. Elongated heads, large eyes, features that suggest something other than ordinary humans. The Nazca lines in Peru form patterns that are only clearly visible from high altitude, from the air, from above the earth. Who would create patterns only visible from the air? Create them, design them, make them, without aircraft, without ability to see from above? The patterns span hundreds of miles across the desert. Hundreds of miles, massive scale, visible only from the sky. Ancient texts reference sky people and visitors from the stars, reference them, mention them, describe them. The Hindu Vedas describe vimanas, or flying vehicles, that transported beings across the earth. Flying vehicles, advanced transportation, aerial technology. The Sumerian texts describe the Anunnaki, visitors from another world who came to Earth and influenced human civilization. Visitors from another world, advanced beings, extraterrestrial contact. While these references might be metaphorical or mythological, they could preserve distant memories of actual contact. Real encounters, genuine meetings. Could these ancient accounts be historical records written in the language available to primitive peoples? Written in language available, described in metaphor, expressed in mythology. However, the extraterrestrial theory, while intriguing, raises as many questions as it answers. Raises questions, creates puzzles, generates mysteries. If aliens helped build these monuments, why did they help only some civilizations? Why only certain sites? Why the uneven distribution? Why the gaps? Why would they teach some people and not others? Why would they establish knowledge centers in some locations but not others? Another theory, supported by researchers like Graham Hancock, proposes that a lost advanced human civilization developed sophisticated knowledge before the last ice age ended about 12,000 years ago. 12,000 years ago, before current civilization, before recorded history, before written records. This civilization, according to the theory, was nearly destroyed by cataclysmic events, massive flooding, climate change, or asteroid impact. Cataclysmic events, global catastrophe, devastating disaster. The survivors of this civilization, scattered across the globe, and fragments of their advanced knowledge were preserved and passed down to developing human societies in various regions. Passed down, transmitted, inherited, preserved, taught. Some of these survivors may have settled in various locations and become the sources of advanced knowledge possessed by cultures like ancient Egypt, ancient Sumeria, and pre-Columbian American civilizations. Sources of knowledge, keepers of wisdom, preservers of understanding. This theory explains the similarities between monuments worldwide, explains the similarities, accounts for the parallels, provides mechanism, provides explanation. It explains why advanced knowledge appears to emerge suddenly in multiple locations. Emerges suddenly, appears suddenly, manifests suddenly. Without apparent development or gradual evolution, it also explains why these cultures seem to decline or lose access to this advanced knowledge over time. Decline. Lose knowledge, forget understanding, lose contact with their teachers. The archaeological evidence that supports this theory includes the water erosion patterns on the Sphinx, suggesting that a more humid climate existed when the Sphinx was carved, possibly by this earlier advanced civilization. Water erosion, humidity patterns, climate evidence, climates. Additionally, the distribution of similar astronomical knowledge and monument alignments across continents suggests connection and transmission rather than independent discovery. Suggests connection, implies transmission, indicates communication, indicates relationship, indicates continuity. The mathematics encoded in the pyramids matches the mathematics present in ancient South American structures. Mathematics, calculation, precision. How would completely isolated civilizations develop the same mathematical systems? Develop, create, discover, without contact, without transmission, without shared knowledge? Evidence from genetic studies shows that humans existed and spread across the world far earlier than previously thought. Spread across, migrated, travelled, journeyed. This makes it plausible that an advanced civilization could have developed and spread its influence globally, leaving traces in the monuments and knowledge systems that surviving populations inherited. Inherited, received, obtained, learned, preserved. Another perspective, held by some researchers, suggests that human cognitive capacity has remained essentially constant throughout our species' existence. Constant, unchanged, stable. Therefore, humans of any era were capable of advanced thought, abstract reasoning, and sophisticated engineering. Advanced thought, abstract reasoning, sophisticated engineering. From this perspective, the mysteries of megalithic construction don't require extraterrestrials or lost advanced civilizations, require, need, demand. They simply require that we acknowledge humans of the past were as intelligent as humans of the present, as intelligent, equal capability, same capacity, same potential. This theory suggests that limited evidence of advanced knowledge in ancient times might reflect limited surviving records, not limited ancient capability. Limited records, few documents, scarce evidence. The problem then becomes not how ancient peoples could accomplish these feats, but why they would invest such enormous resources in monumental construction. Accomplish these feats, build these monuments, create these structures. This raises spiritual and cultural questions rather than technological ones. Raises questions, prompts inquiry, demands consideration. Perhaps the monuments reflect genuine spirituality, sincere belief systems, and authentic cultural values that motivated enormous commitment. Genuine spirituality, sincere belief, authentic values, religious fervor, spiritual conviction, sacred duty. Whatever theory one finds most compelling, the evidence points toward human history being far more complex, ancient, and sophisticated than mainstream archaeology currently acknowledges. Far more complex, far more ancient, far more sophisticated. The monuments themselves constitute this evidence. The monuments, the structures, the stone markers, the alignments, the precision, the scale, the mystery. They testify to something beyond what we've been taught. They speak to us across the millennia. They call to us. They demand answers. Common patterns. Across all sites, when we examine all of these impossible monuments together, the pyramids of Egypt, the ruins of Baalbek, Puma Punku in Bolivia, Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, Stonehenge in England, Sacsayhuaman in Peru, Ollantaytambo in the Andes, the Karnak stones in France, the Moai of Easter Island, and countless other sites worldwide, certain patterns emerge with remarkable clarity. Remarkable clarity, undeniable patterns, clear connections. The first pattern is precision. Precision beyond what conventional methods supposedly available would allow. Precision, exactness, mathematical accuracy, tighter than Inca work, more exact than Egyptian documentation would suggest, more advanced than conventional timelines would indicate. The second pattern is astronomical alignment. Alignment with celestial bodies. Connects T into stars and seasons. Demonstrable, measurable, verifiable. Too many sites align with solar events. Too many monuments track lunar cycles. Too many structures point towards specific stars. Impossible to be coincidence. Impossible to explain as independent discovery. The third pattern is the absence of satisfactory, conventional explanations. Absence, lack, gap, no adequate explanation, no convincing mechanism, no plausible method. Archaeology cannot account for these sites. Archaeology cannot explain the construction techniques. Archaeology cannot demonstrate the methods. Archaeology essentially admits defeat but insists the conventional narrative must be correct anyway. The fourth pattern is the resistance of authorities to unrestricted investigation. Resistance, opposition, barriers, gatekeeping, suppression, always at critical moments, always when breakthroughs approach, always when discoveries would challenge established views. The fifth pattern is the tendency of local populations to attribute these monuments to earlier peoples or to gods. Attribute to earlier peoples, recognize they didn't build them. Preserve memory of antiquity. Acknowledge that something was already ancient. The Inca didn't claim to build what they maintained. The Egyptians inherited what they occupied. The local peoples of Göbekli Tepe's region possessed no memory of building that site. What does this consistent pattern tell us? What does this repeated testimony suggest? What does this unified voice across different cultures and continents communicate? All of these patterns suggest something profound. Suggest, indicate, point toward, imply. They suggest that human history contains chapters we've yet to fully read. Chapters of achievement, chapters of knowledge, chapters of capability, chapters that have been largely erased or forgotten. Lost chapters, hidden chapters, suppressed chapters, denied chapters. What would happen if we finally read these chapters? What would it mean for our understanding of human potential? What would it suggest about the capabilities of ancient peoples? What would it prove about the sophistication of earlier civilizations? The patterns speak for themselves. The patterns cannot be ignored. The patterns demand attention. The patterns demand explanation. And the explanation cannot come from conventional archaeology, because conventional archaeology is bound by gatekeeping and defensive institutional citizens. It cannot admit that previous understandings were flawed. It cannot acknowledge that established views might be incomplete. It cannot accept that human history is far stranger and more wonderful than we've been taught. The time has come to acknowledge what the evidence screams at us if we're willing to listen. The evidence screams. The monuments testify. The stone speaks. The precision demands explanation. The alignment demands acknowledgement. The scale demands respect. Everything we've examined, from the Great Pyramids to the Karnak stones, from Stonehenge to Easter Island, from Sacsayhuaman to Ollantaytambo, points toward a conclusion that mainstream archaeology has been reluctant to face. Reluctant, unwilling, resistant, defensive. The conclusion is this: human history is far older and far more sophisticated than we've been taught. Far older, far more sophisticated, far more advanced. The monuments are the evidence. The monuments are the testimony. The monuments are the proof. But they remain largely unexplored, with many sealed chambers still unexamined, many hidden voids still unmapped, many secrets still undiscovered, still unexamined, still hidden, still mysterious, still waiting. The gatekeepers continue to restrict access, continue to restrict, maintain barriers, enforce limitations, prevent investigation. As long as this restriction continues, the truth remains hidden, stays concealed, persists in darkness, waits beneath the surface. But the monuments endure. They endure through the centuries. They endure despite the suppression. They endure across millennia. And eventually, the truth will emerge. The truth will emerge. The barriers will fall. The gates will open. The secrets will be revealed. We are witnessing the beginning of this transformation. The beginning, the dawn, the initial moments. More researchers are questioning the official narrative. More investigators are examining the evidence. More people are asking the difficult questions that authorities have preferred to avoid. Questioning the narrative, asking the questions, demanding answers, seeking truth, demanding access, refusing to accept gatekeeping, refusing to accept suppression, refusing to accept conventional explanations that don't fit the evidence. The internet has democratized information. Digital communication has spread discoveries beyond the reach of traditional gatekeepers. Videos, documentaries, and independent researchers are reaching millions of people worldwide. Reaching millions, spreading truth, challenging established narratives. The old system of gatekeeping is weakening, cracking, eroding. It cannot hold forever. It cannot suppress forever. It cannot prevent forever the questions from being asked and answered. Perhaps within our lifetime, or within our children's lifetimes, we will finally have access to the sealed chambers within the Great Pyramid. Access to what lies behind Gantenbrink's doors. Answers to what purpose the massive void serves. Perhaps we will finally explore the true history embedded in Ollantaytambo's construction and understand how those enormous stones were transported across such difficult terrain. Perhaps we will study Karnak stones' astronomical connections and discover the advanced knowledge their creators possessed. Perhaps at Göbekli Tepe we will excavate further and uncover evidence of the sophisticated civilization that built it at a time when, according to conventional history, such sophistication shouldn't have existed. Perhaps we will finally gain permission to fully explore Pumapunku. Perhaps we will understand the true builders and purposes of Baalbek. Perhaps we will solve the mysteries of Sacsayhuaman. Perhaps, maybe, possibly. When that day comes, when the gates finally open and restricted access is granted, when unrestricted investigation is allowed, when gatekeepers no longer control what we can learn, the answer to one of humanity's greatest mysteries will finally be revealed. Finally revealed, brought to light, made known, disclosed. And the world will have to grapple with the reality that human history is not what we've been taught, not what textbooks claim, not what official narratives suggest, not what authorities have insisted. The monuments will have spoken at last, and we will finally listen, at last hear, at last understand. And history will be rewritten, the truth will emerge, the real story will be told, the full narrative will be revealed, the hidden chapters will be opened, and humanity will have to accept that its past is far grander, far older, and far more mysterious than it ever imagined. We will have to accept that our ancestors, or some previous advanced civilization, accomplished things we still cannot fully explain, accomplished feats, built monuments, left legacies, encoded knowledge, preserved wisdom, in stone, in geometry, in astronomical alignments, for us to discover, for us to study, for us to finally understand. The monuments are the message, stone is the medium, truth is the content, and that truth is waiting for us, waiting for the day when gatekeepers no longer control access, when restrictions fall away, when the sealed doors finally open, when the hidden chambers are finally explored, when all the mysteries are finally revealed. That day is coming. It must come. It will come. And when it does, everything will change.